Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman, Judiciary Committee Ranking Member Doug Collins. Congressman, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Tell us about Nancy Pelosi's resolution and how that plays out in the House today.
Well, I think it's become amazing to me, Maria, and we've talked about this before. They absolutely have no agenda. This is, I mean, for the Democratic Party to have ran on this agenda of we the people and we're going to for the people and all this. I mean, right now, all they're doing is simply going around. It seems to me like they're throwing darts against the board. They're putting the headlines in the paper and saying, here's what we're going to work on. They're actually going to do a war powers resolution. We've been talking about the issue in the Middle East, and so this week, this is not about War Powers Act. This is not about, Congress control. This is about slapping at the president, who they don't like. It's about the 2020 election. Here's an interesting issue. Where was Nancy Pelosi yelling about an issue needed for the War Powers Resolution or others when the drone strikes, which were up during the Obama administration, were all over the place? This is simply political because they have no agenda. They're trying again to do a sort of a shuffling. Say, American people, don't look at what we're actually supposed to be doing. Look at this shiny object over here because we're stuck in impeachment. We're stuck here, and we don't have an agenda to actually put forward. So we're just going to attack the president with this phony, basically, resolution this week that'll go nowhere.
Well, that's what's happening. We're looking, as you're talking, at live pictures of Tehran, Congressman, and in Tehran they're mourning Soleimani's death, and there are crowds in the street in Iran. And the question I asked earlier is, how dangerous is it that you've got such a dangerous situation unfolding with Iran and the U.S. And at home you've got, half of the Congress against this president, trying to limit his powers?
Well, it is concerning. And I think when you have a concern here that where you have the Democrats playing politics, far more with a world situation than they are focused on what actually could be done in the world and the real dangers of the world of Iran. Let's not forget who we're dealing with here. Iran is the world exporter of terror. That's their export. You can talk about oil and energy and everything else, but their real damage to this world is that they're an exporter of terror. And Soleimani is someone who is the top chief lieutenant, prince of terror, if you want to put it that way, who needed to be taken out. I think the president made a strong statement after the continued work of Iran disrupting Iraq, disrupting the things happening in Iraq, and then the attack on our embassy. He made a forceful statement. Now, are there for these Democratic candidates who keep saying, well, we have no plan past that, we have a plan. Secretary Pompeo talked about it. The Defense Department is ready for what Iran may throw at us. But the question is how long are we going to let Iran continue to kill Americans and kill others in the world without being stood up to? The president is doing that, but right now we're playing politics with it in the Democratic House and these Democratic candidates who want them to believe that there's somehow now that the president has pushed us to the brink of war. Iran has been attacking us for years and attacking the world. It was time for an action. The president made that action. Now we will deal with that going forward, but we're not going to do it with phony shows of votes in the Democratic House while she's sitting there holding impeachment articles over this president as if she has some control over the Senate. We need to get straight and get back to the work of the American people. The president's shown how to do that. Trade deals. We've signed that we're going to work on USMCA this week in the Senate. We've got the China deal coming up. Where is infrastructure? Where is immigration work? Where are the part? Right now, this speaker is failing America, and she's putting us in a weaker position in the eyes of many in the world by not standing up and saying we support our president as he fights against terror in the world.
Yeah, it's just the same as when the president goes overseas and you've got all of this discussion negative about him in Washington. I mean, here we are at an impasse, right, Congressman? I mean, Nancy Pelosi is refusing to send the articles of impeachment over to the Senate. So on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday, I spoke with Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, asked him for a timeline, and he said, I thought, something that was news breaking in terms of wanting to change the rules of the Senate. Listen to this. Senator, we are waiting on Nancy Pelosi to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate. What are you expecting in the way of a Senate impeachment trial this week or next week?
Well, I hope to have the trial over by the end of January. We'd use the Clinton model where you take the record established in the House, let the House managers appointed by Pelosi make the argument, let the president make his argument, so why the two articles are flawed, and then we'll decide whether or not we want witnesses, but this should be done in a couple of weeks.
So he's saying if they don't send the articles over this week, he's going to move to get the rules changed, whereas basically saying once there's a majority vote for impeachment, then impeachment is on. The Senate can begin a trial. What's your take on what happens now? Nobody knows where this is going.
Well, I think that it just shows the problem that Nancy Pelosi has put into this. But I think Senator Graham is right. I think people are ready for this to be over. Let's get it to the Senate. Again, the hypocrisy just drips from Nancy Pelosi. For her to get up into the well when we were debating the articles of impeachment on the floor and dress solemnly and say this is a dire moment for our country and we went to this as our duty. We didn't come forward to impeach the president. That's bull. They came in wanting to impeach this president 3 years ago. And then to do that on the floor and tell the American people as a sacred honor and duty that they had to do this impeachment, and then within just a matter of hours walk out and use it as these impeachment articles as a political document, a political ploy to get something out of the Senate because their case is so bad they didn't want it exposed in the Senate. It just shows the American people that this Democratic majority, and this speaker in particular, is devoid of ideas. My question is why don't we go back and actually look at where we started with all this? Why doesn't my chairman, Jerry Nadler, in the Judiciary Committee call Mr. Horowitz in to give his report on the Inspector General as he did in the Senate? Why don't we continue our look to see how the corruption of the FISA court, the corruption that brought us to the point where we're at now? These are issues that need to be investigated, but when you have no agenda, when you have no plan, when you have no purpose, and all your focus is to defeat this president in 2020, then all you're going to do is keep lying to the American people and keep deflecting with faux votes on the floor and trying to make people realize that the emperor has no clothes. Nancy Pelosi has no agenda.
Well, here we are. It is 2020. It is game on, Congressman. I mean, you've got a number of senators who are expected to be sitting in that trial. And you know, once you get into the trial for impeachment, you sit there 6 days a week. You can't leave. And there's Klobuchar, Warren, Sanders, Booker. They want to get to Iowa. So how does this play out for 2020 in the election?
Well, I think at this point, again, I think the best thing for President Trump is to let those ones that you just mentioned keep speaking, because every time they open their mouth, they show how bad their vision is for America. And when you compare that to what the president has done and his record of success in the economic front and on the foreign affairs front and moving this forward with a clear agenda, I think it actually helps. But if I was one of those presidential candidates, I'd be calling the Speaker Pelosi and saying, what are you doing? This is not a show about you. You've done your part. Now send it to the Senate so we can finish this. But at the end of the day, they realize they have nothing on this president. I lived this for an entire last year. All they want to do is smear this president. All they want to do is tear this president down because they have no agenda of their own, and they're desperate to get the presidency back in 2020. When we look at it this way, it becomes very crystal clear. This year, it ought to be a focus on simply what we have been doing from the perspective of the economy for this president, the foreign affairs, our trade deals coming together, and the people of America are better off under President Donald Trump than they are under anyone that the Democrats will put forward. And Nancy Pelosi is simply the political arm of the Democratic National Committee by doing what she is doing. And we're going to keep calling it out, and she's going to keep showing herself for the hypocrisy that she is as we continue this process this year.
All right. Does anything get done real quick? Do you think USMCA passes in the next week in the Senate and then to the president's desk?
I think it gets passed fairly quickly. There's large consensus in the Senate for this, and this is, again, another win. This is what shows what this leadership can do and what Mitch McConnell is going to be doing in the Senate this week.
We will leave it there. Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much.